This is Jim Cooper from the Olympia City Council, Vice Chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. We're going to go here in just a second. I'm just taking a moment to stall and see if our chair shows up or whether she had an issue getting on Zoom. So stay tuned. All right, we'll give it another minute and then we'll just get going if that's okay with everyone. I'm sure Renee would appreciate us staying on task. Hopefully everything's okay on her end. Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and convene the meeting. I'm calling to order the December 7th meeting of the Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Let's go ahead and do some introductions from the record. I'll read down the roster up by jurisdiction and then move to the staff. And perfect timing. I'll kick off the introductions and then our chair can take over so she has a minute to adjust on Zoom. Good morning, Renee.
Good morning and thank you.
No worries. So our chair, Renee, is here. I'm Jim Cooper from the Olympia City Council, Thurston County. Let's do this a different way. I'm going to go to Joe.
Yeah, Joe Downing, Port of Olympia, present.
Richard. You're muted, sir.
Sorry about that. Richard Moon, District 2 resident.
Joseph.
Joseph Richardson, City Council of Yale, position number 2.
David.
David Nightingale, a business representative.
Delroy.
Delroy Cox, the solid waste industry rep.
Chad.
Chad Sutter from the recycling industry rep.
Elaine.
Elaine from Tenino City Council, position 2.
Greg.
Greg Schaumbachler, citizen and ag rep.
Ed.
Ed Kunkel, City Lacey Council member.
Okay, did I miss anyone from the committee? No, I don't think so. So Amanda, can you walk us through the staff?
Sure. So I'm here, Amanda, solid waste planner. I have Angela with me taking notes. And I believe we have Dean Benning here. He is going to be doing the manager's report for Jeff today.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Dean.
And I don't think I see anyone here from, oh, we have Chris Hawkins from Public Health.
Good morning. Good to see you folks.
And I don't think I see anyone else. If I missed anyone, please speak up.
Aaron Robertson, Pacific Disposal.
And I can see Ron.
Ron Jones, City of Olympia staff.
Steve.
Steve Gilmore with Republic Services.
Nick.
Morning, everyone. Nick Harbert with WM, formerly Waste Management.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. It looks like we have a quorum, so I'll hand the meeting back over to Madam Chair.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you jumping in this morning. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the agenda for today's meeting? It's very short and very sweet. If so, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting, December 7th.
Also move.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And have you all had a chance to look at the minutes from our last meeting from November 2?
Yes.
Good.
Move approval.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions before we move to a full vote? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. I'm hearing no nays, so the minutes from November 2 have been approved. Do we have any public comments this morning? Amanda, do you know?
Not that I see.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's just move then on to a presentation from David Nightingale.
All right, can you guys see the screen there?
Yes, sir.
Great, okay. All righty, so my company, as you probably a lot of you remember, is Special Waste Associates. And I'm happy to give this presentation. I've been doing this work for quite a few years, and it's something I enjoy doing. So even though I'm officially in retirement age, I'm not stopping. I worked for Department of Ecology for many years. Actually, before that, I actually worked for an engineering consulting firm in Seattle before they recruited me. Then I've got my company, Special Waste Associates. I've been doing this consulting, originally sort of a part-time thing, and now it's pretty much all I do other than gardening, so and other things. So I've been doing it for quite a while, and in that time, since even before ecology, I've visited over 155 household hazardous waste collection facilities around the United States and 3 provinces. So I think it's a world record, but I don't know. Nobody's challenged me yet on that, but it's kind of sick probably, but that's the way it is. And also I do training for SWANA and with NAMA, the North American Hazardous Materials Management Association, for operators, sort of baseline 24-hour training, health and safety for these kind of operations. So in addition to sort of helping people design these kind of facilities, they also provide some training in operation. And the NAMA board, that's again the North American Hazardous Materials Management Association. I just got elected this year to be on the board again for a 3-year term. So it's part of my volunteer work in addition to being on the Thurston SWAC. And up here on the upper right, there's a book I wrote about 11 years ago about how to design these facilities. And then this yellow one here actually is just been published, and this is a compilation of 30 articles I wrote about HHW issues, whether it's design, policy, regulation, what have you. It just came out. Sort of my educational background is I've got degrees in business as well as engineering, business from Western and engineering from University of Washington. And of course, my credential, I'm a member of the SWAC. So that's probably, I probably should have put that first, but it's part of my credentials. So the first facilities were built around the mid 1980s. Not a lot of them. It was sort of a scattered sort of thing. Individual jurisdictions around the country decided we need to do something, that's a permanent presence in our community. So people, did the best they could, but there was nothing to go by. There was no guidance. There was nobody, even the neighbors didn't have anything. Now there's many hundreds, maybe even thousands. Nobody's really made a count of how many facilities there are now around the US and Canada, but they continue to grow. I'm working for a number of clients. Some are building their first facilities, some are building a second or replacement for their first facilities. So as things go, things evolve. And in retrospect, after this many years, there's some things that people copying. Maybe there's only one guy in the state that has a a facility. And so they said, well, it's working for them. We'll do that same thing. And without understanding that there's better ways to do it, they kind of often will perpetuate, mistakes or things that actually limit the safety or the efficiency of the facility. So that's why I'm put together this presentation, looking at things that can be done better. So facilities, here's just some pictures of some nice looking ones that have been built probably in the last 15 years or so. But it's a newer part of the solid waste system. I mean, it's composting, landfilling, been out there for many decades. It's only a couple of decades since really the mid 80s that these facilities have been out there. And in that time, by the mid 80s, there's probably only 20 or so facilities, even by the end of the 80s, just a few per state, and some states didn't have any. And so they've evolved over time. They haven't stayed static. The facilities the size you're seeing here from California and Iowa, nobody back in the 80s were building facilities of this magnitude and this size back in those days. So I put together a series back in the very beginning of 2000, almost coinciding with COVID, of, in my experience, what are the 6 things that people, they miss the opportunities, they don't get things as good as they could. And so this is an examination of those 6 features that if you're doing a new facility like Thurston County might be doing in South Transfer Station or wherever, that these are things you want to pay attention to. And some of these things were done really well at the current Hazel House, but not everything. So if you're aware of them, then you're likely to end up with an average facility as opposed to a really excellent facility. So number 1 is smaller is not better. Here's an example of a facility. And the way you can tell it's an HHW facility is because they spray painted HHW right here on the outside. So this is a garden shed, obviously. This is up in Toronto, Canada. I'm sure this has been replaced many years ago, but get a folding table, get a garden shed, a pair of gloves and a hard hat, and you're off to the races. So, this is the evolution, the start of the evolution, and things have come a long way since then. So, nobody would build something like this and call it a permanent facility today. But, how big should it be is, of course, the question, and it depends. And its potential of existing or future resources, essentially, what do you have in your community that can support a facility? That's going to, in some ways, influence what kind of facility you can build and how big it might be. Also, what kind of household hazardous waste do you want to collect? For instance, electronics in the last decade has come on as something a lot of communities want, and there's been a lot of laws around the country passed that require the collection of household hazardous waste, including electronics, but is requiring manufacturers to pick up the tab for some of those electronic waste, including here in Washington State. When I worked for Department of Ecology, I was involved in getting that going from an industry perspective. But also medical waste, asbestos, photovoltaic panels now are becoming a big deal. And are you handling small business waste? All of these things are going to influence how large a facility and the design of the facility of how you are going to meet the needs that you want to do with whatever facility you build. And then is there policies that are driving our goals? Is there state mandates that every community has to have some sort of program? And that's, for instance, in Minnesota and Washington and California, there's a number of states where each county or city has to have a program for managing HHW. A lot of states don't have that, but these some do. And what is the driving behind that? Is it a desire to reduce the toxicity in the waste stream? Is it to prevent groundwater contamination or contamination of lakes and rivers? Is it an idea of, we don't want these chemical reactions that we're having a lot of these days with, for instance, lithium ion batteries being tossed in the trash? They still have a lot of energy left in them even after they're discharged for use in a device, but they tend to create a lot of heat and fires. I saw one article not long ago by a fellow that has a bunch of materials recovery facilities in the Midwest or the South. I don't remember where, but he said, you know, by his estimate, there's one significant fire per month, and a lot of them are due to the presence of lithium-ion battery fires in garbage. And I saw another recent thing that last year was the most fires ever since they've been tracked at solid waste facilities. So a lot of concern about chemical reactions, and specifically a new thing, these lithium-ion batteries that are in everything these days. And then there's also backing up to where does this come from? If you get these materials out of the home, you're reducing the risk to children and other people in the home, because you don't have these dangerous chemicals that are no longer wanted remaining in the home. And also more recently, there's been a focus on, okay, so we've got maybe one facility like we do here in the north side of the county, but what about places far away? What about people in more rural areas of the county? Are we really doing an equitable distribution of the facilities and the services across the county, or whatever jurisdiction you have to be in? And also, what about the elderly? What about the lower income people, people of color? You know, does everybody really have a fair way to access these services? So that all those kind of drivers can go into decision making on where and how big you make a facility. Some sort of general rules of thumbs I come up with based on my experience is just based on service population and where I've seen facilities that have been large enough to serve these populations is, less than 50,000. Maybe you'd look at a minimal size of at least 2,000 square feet, but for planning, maybe 3,000, 4,000 square feet, maybe where you want to be. And we're down here over 100,000 population. So if I were going to advise Thurston County at this point, I'd say you want to plan for something in the 10 to 14,000 square foot level for serving a county this size. And also with a county, you know, as we are like pushing 300,000, I would suggest that you want to look at maybe multiple facilities, which is exactly what we're doing right now in our planning. So anyway, again, you know, are you gonna have more than just traditional stuff? You're gonna have e-waste, appliances, other things. So that's going to affect these planning levels I have listed here is for just the traditional HHW, not including putting in electronics, not having sharps that are going to take up space, or other things, appliances that you might take the Freon out. All of these things would be in additional square footage to what I show here on this chart here. And so, for us, it's I think a question is, do we need additional capacity or facility of some sort down in the South County? All right, so here's just an example of size of a facility. They actually put a request for proposals out for the design and building of a facility October, so a little more than a month ago. They're about pushing 1 million people, but a very large county, 8,000 square miles. So they're larger both in population and in size than Thurston County. They're currently serving about 20,000 customers per year. They've got 2 satellite facilities and a central facility, and they're replacing the current facility, which is just over capacity right now. And they're planning for 23,000 square feet of enclosed building. And they're going to have e-waste and sharps, which are a big deal and driving a lot of the size of it. So 18,000 square feet is for that, another 2,000 square feet of office mezzanine. Reuse area, so just a separate room within the facility footprint that's just like a retail area to reuse HHW that comes in. It's perfectly fine. The owner just doesn't need it anymore, but full cans of antifreeze come in and all kinds of things that are usable, 3/4 of a gallon of white paint. And they see 5,600 customers per year just using their reuse site right now. And then the rest of the footprint is canopies for either the customers dropping off materials or loading docks for shipping materials off-site. So that's the how big is should you big, and it depends on all those features. And then getting a little more down in the weeds. Second thing that I mentioned is ventilation, exhaust ventilation specifically, and especially for flammable liquids. Typically, these facilities, if somebody brings in a can of gas that's been overwintered and out of their boat and it's stale, they don't want to put it back in their motor again, or for whatever reasons, other flammable liquids, solvents that are highly flammable, they get bulked into a 55-gallon drum for economies and also some operating savings. But even though that's been done, and it's done in Thurston County here at the Hazel House, like most places, oftentimes though there's not good ventilation. And there's two reasons for paying attention to ventilation. One is to protect exposure of these toxic fumes. They're kind of a neurotoxin. If you're exposed to these fumes routinely, you don't want the workers exposed to that. So if you can avoid that by having good ventilation, that's certainly a good thing to do. And also, probably maybe the more obvious thing is that if you have these vapors out there, they can catch fire or potentially even explode. So there are rules in place, but they're kind of deep in the International Mechanical Code, which is part of the system of building codes that's adopted across the United States. And this one part of it here that I cite, section 502.1.1 says an exhaust system shall be located in an area of highest concentration of contamination. So wherever you're pouring this stuff, that's the area where it's being generated. So that's the area of the highest contaminants. So you need to have that ventilation right close to where it's happening. And also in the mechanical code, it says that these vapors, which are typically heavier than air for gasoline and other things, that you need to also have a place close to where you're pouring them within about a foot of the floor for anything that escapes that ventilation at the point of generation, because they go down to the floor level and sucks it up at that point. So they're fugitive vapors that don't get picked up in the primary ventilation, and they get picked up off the floor. In addition, in this state, we've got Department of Ecology, and I helped write this rule when I worked there, and it says you also want to have a ventilation for dust. So when you're packing materials into a drum or a box that has absorbents with it, a lot of times there's dust that's generated. So you want to have ability to remove those dust particles from the breathing zones of the workers as well. So another hazard that we want to mitigate. And here is a person, or not person, a picture of the Hazo House. And you can see these ventilators here. The ones in the yellow circle, that's doing at the point of generation. So those are a couple of drums where they're pouring in the gasoline or the solvents that are highly flammable into the drum. And then those ventilators right behind, those silver things, they're sucking the air right away from where the person is standing, away from their breathing zone, and exhausting it out into the outside of the building. And the same thing at the floor level, that lower arrow here, that's a within 12 inches of the floor. There's another ventilation duct there that also sucks these flammable vapors out of the building. So this is a good example. Next thing is related to that flammables area. You know, how big should be that area? Because in order to have those flammable gas ventilators, as well as because of the volume of flammable materials, that becomes an area of the building that's an H occupancy, which it stands for a hazard area or a high hazard area. And so when you have a high hazard area, there's a whole bunch of things you have to do to meet building code requirements. For instance, all of the fixtures, all the switches, any kind of plug you have has to be explosion proof, which is more expensive than your basic thing you'd find in your house. So they're very expensive fixtures. And so in order to build with meeting the fire code, what you want to do is you want to have a separate room for those flammables. So you only have those expensive features inside of that room, and the rest of the facility can have the normal electrical and other safety features and not be classified as a H occupancy. So limiting that to be big enough but not too big of the H areas is what you want to do. So Here's an example that I'm showing here. So this is just a J box where you've got a sensor here, but this is the wiring connecting the sensor to this hardwired electrical conduit. And also this conduit is connected to this connector with this light here that's explosion proof. So these big honking things and this hardwired conduit, as opposed to plastic conduit or something else, is how you do the explosion proof wiring on the electrical side, that part of the H occupancy. Problem with this is not that it's here and that it's been done, but this is a part of this building. I'm not going to tell you where it is because this is a part of the building where all they have in it is electronics, which is not a flammable vapor. It's a very inert product. There's no reason to have electrical explosion-proof devices in that room. So they paid a lot of money, I'm sure tens of thousands of dollars in this large room where there's only electronics being stored for all this electrical stuff to be put in here that's explosion-proof. So that's something you want to avoid. Number 4 is weather protection. The fire here, you say, why is there fire with weather protection? Usually when it's raining, you know, it's gonna put a fire down. So anyway, normally, you know, most garbage, it just gets wet if it gets rained on or something, or it gets snowed on. But there's some household hazardous waste that cause dangerous reactions, including, for instance, the lithium-ion batteries, but there's other things. For instance, there's a rodent poison called zinc phosphide. If you put that with water, you get phosphine gas, which is a toxic, you know, it's poison. It's designed to kill things, animals specifically. And so if you add water to it, it evolves this phosphine gas, which is very toxic. And if you're in air at 104 degrees, one of the manufacturers I saw that this phosphine gas will spontaneously combust. So it will create a toxic and a very flammable and spontaneously combustible mixture if you mix this stuff on a very hot summer day. We don't often get to 104 here, but other parts of the country do. So, you know, just an example, and this zinc phosphide has been a rodent pesticide out there manufactured since at least the 1940s and is still being sold. So this is not something that's, new or no longer produced. You can buy that today. Also, spa chemicals, you know, typically chlorine compounds. Also, they will mix those with water from if they get rained on. They'll create heat, which can lead to fires at transfer stations. This has happened, as well as they can make a chlorine type of gas, which is an irritant, and potentially people have gone to the emergency room for treatment from this happening at transfer stations. So again, a common thing, if you got a hot tub or a pool, this is something you might throw out, and it could be exposed to water. It could be an uncontrolled reaction. Last one I'll mention is calcium carbide. This is not seen as frequently as some of the other things. It's used to generate a acetylene gas, which is very flammable, even explosive when you put water in it. And calcium carbide was used for many years in these little headlamp things that you put the calcium carbide and a little bit of drip of water in. It would make a little bit of acetylene, and it would be a little flame that would be a miner's lamp for going into doing spelunking, or in the old days, you know, actual miners would use that. So you see this not as often, but it's really dangerous stuff, and you don't want to put water into it. So protecting especially where people are bringing the waste from getting exposure to being rained on or snowed on is an important thing to avoid fire or toxic gas, that sort of stuff. And here again is a great example from Thurston County Hazel House, where here's a spill containment area where you park your car, and there's a rain screen here on the side that keeps the water from blowing in on this side, and there's a 10-foot overhang of the roof that has all the water going away from the customer service area here to eliminate water from getting into the area where you're unloading your waste and potentially could get rained on. So this was a great design the architects came up with. for protecting this area from blown precipitation. All right, number 5 out of 6, so we're almost done, is reuse. And as I mentioned, Kern County, for instance, had I think what 3,000 square feet devoted just to their reuse area. And in the solid waste management hierarchy, usually you've got waste reduction followed by reuse. So it's usually the second thing on the highest part of the list, ahead of recycling, energy recovery, or disposal. And reuse is pretty much an educational process. Even before you generate it, you buy the right amount and that sort of stuff. But then reuse, once to generate it, and the point where we're seeing this stuff coming into a facility, it's already been generated. So then at that point, reuse is your best option. And however, it's been underutilized in a lot of facilities. A lot of facilities do minimal reuse of household hazardous waste coming in. So anyway, here's some examples of some programs around the country. One in Leon County, Florida, where they have 118,000 pounds per year recently, which was they diverted the equivalent of close to 13% of the total household hazardous waste that came in. They diverted, and the operating cost savings, essentially the savings that did, or the money they did not have to pay for taking that waste away from to be disposed of, was 14,000. Then you can see Johnson County in Kansas, a higher amount, almost 250,000 pounds of household hazardous waste diverted, and over 1/3 of what they come in. So they have a very aggressive program. They do great, and it's saving them a couple $1,000s per year. And then here's an example from the Bay Area in California, almost, well, you know, 1/3 to 1,500 pounds, and they're diverting 17% plus and saving themselves $144,000 per year. So just some examples of places where I think they've done a pretty good job of reuse. And it's very popular with the public. There's things you have to do to control so people don't come in and, you know, if it's free, you don't want somebody taking all this stuff, you know, filling another trunk and taking out. So a lot of times people, you know, you can only come in once a week. You can only take 5 or 10 items at a time. And, you know, so people don't end up, you know, taking it home and then it ends up back at the facility 3 years later, kind of thing. So you need to control, and also just an equity thing, letting everybody have a chance to get some. And also commonly there's a liability waiver that your you know, risk manager can get together with your prosecuting attorney and come up with some waiver form that says, you know, this is used at your own risk. And also you don't want to put, for instance, ban pesticides out or things that aren't in their original container, or you can't read the labels on how to use it. So there's some practical things about you're putting stuff out that's really good and really usable and not junky stuff out there. So anyway, this is great, and something actually that Thurston County, I don't think, has done a very good job on it. I haven't seen the statistics, but just with my experience going the last half a dozen years or so to the Hazzo House, there's not much activity in the Hazzo House compared to some of these other places. So I think it's a place we can improve. Number 6, the last thing I'm going to mention is use of natural light. It saves operating costs if you don't have to turn the light on, you're not using electricity. And then with sustainability concerns, if you're not turning the lights on, then you're not burning any coal or gas. Even though we use a lot of hydro here, there's still a significant amount of coal and gas that is used over the space of the year where the hydro can't make it all up. So there's some carbon reduction happening. And also from the workers' perspective, there's studies that have shown that this can increase productivity and morale and ultimately worker retention. If you have a lot of natural light in the building where people are working, they like to be there. It's a much more pleasant space, and you know, workers are happier to be there. It's really easy to be designed into a new building, and often you can even retrofit this into buildings. It's usually a combination of windows in strategic places, skylights, clear stories, translucent panels, like on that drive-through where that windscreen was. That was a translucent windscreen, so that light could still come in from the side of where the drive-through on the Hazzo House was. And there's also light tubes that can bring down through areas and through these highly reflective columns of light can come down and light even interior parts of buildings. Okay, so here's an example, just a theoretical. This isn't building on anything based on actual, but just let's, for example, let's imagine you've got a facility that's 8,000 square feet. An annual energy use maybe around in an average building might be 7 kilowatts per hour per square foot over during the year. And so if you're paying, 10.28 cents per kilowatt hour, which was a national average a few years ago, you'd have an annual lighting cost of, pushing $6,000 per year. So the extent that you can reduce that by just simply designing the facility so you don't have to turn on the lights. And most facilities are mainly open during daylight hours. So you can probably turn a lot of lights off and save at least these amount of monies or a substantial amount by having good natural light examples. And here again, here's the Hazel house on the inside looking from above. And you see these windows on this side as well as the other side are supplementing. There's a little in the center here, you can see it's more yellowish. That's because this is the artificial light. So it's a combination, but you can see how much brighter it is over here and on this side where the natural light is being brought into the facility. Here's a facility using a light shaft. So these look like they're fluorescent or LED fixtures. They are not. This is in the daylight, and this is light being brought down through a highly reflective shaft and then into these light diffusers and really lighting up this HHW facility really well. This is down in Mesa, Arizona, and this one is for California facility. This is inside one of those H occupancies where they're bulking and storing flammable liquids. And they had this whole wall here that is designed, if they had an explosion, that these plastic panels actually blow out. But in the meantime, they're flooding light into this facility and keeping it so they never have to turn the lights on in this part of their facility. So that is it for me. Any questions or comments? I'd be happy to try to answer. But that's the end of the road on my presentation anyway. Renee, you're muted.
I just realized I was. Thank you. That was really informative, David. Thank you so much. If you can stop screen sharing, then we can see who might have their hand up with a question. Does anybody have a question or a comment for David?
David, this is Dean Benning. I have a quick question. On the Johnson County, Kansas HHW facility, they had more than 1/3 of their waste diverted. What would you say are the key differences there between their high rate of diversion and others?
So they did, they spent a lot of time trying to find outlets for things like a lot of their architectural paint. They found like nonprofit Habitat for Humanity, that sort of stuff, where they were able to divert paint, which is a big part of the waste stream. Usually, 40 to 60% of the traditional suite of household hazardous waste, not including electronics and other stuff. The traditional HHW suite of materials, 40 to 60% is normally paints of some sort. And the majority of that, probably 70% of that is latex paint. And then a large proportion of that is good usable stuff. So if it hasn't been frozen or, sitting outside for years at a time. And so they found ways to, sometimes ship truckloads of this stuff off to nonprofits or other people that would buy it from them to use that paint. That was probably the biggest thing they did. Another thing that they did was that they also decided, so, okay, all we're quantifying here is the amount that we're avoiding disposal cost. But they also, for, 4 months or so, they decided, well, what the products that we're sending back to our community, what's the value of that? So they actually meticulously said, okay, we've got, a half a gallon of Clorox bleach. What's the price of that retail at the store? And they quantified how much they were saving their customers compared to how much they were saving disposal costs. And it was like, I don't know, 1.5 or 2 times the amount that they were saving in disposal costs that was benefiting the community. So you can multiply the amount of disposal costs by, some factor 1 or 2 times to the benefit to the community, in addition to what they're just saving in operating costs.
Excellent. Very creative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really good stuff.
Yeah, thanks, David. And Greg had his hand up as well.
Yeah, actually, that was answered in that round there.
Okay,
Thanks.
excellent, good. Any other questions or comments for David?
Yeah, I had a question, but I didn't know how to raise my hand. Oh, there it is at the bottom of the screen. I see it.
Go ahead, you've got the floor.
Okay, I figured it out now. Okay, well, anyways, the interesting thing, David, was those lithium ion batteries and then these fires. Are a lot of those fires happening in the process of, say, taking them to the transfer station, or as they get compressed, or, where's that taking place, and how serious of a matter is this? Because I think it's only going to increase.
Yeah, definitely is increasing. And I wrote a couple of articles just about lithium ions in that 2.5 years that I did this monthly articles, and talking to the manufacturing representatives, it's like, yeah, I mean, this stuff is just, it's a huge increase curve as far as the devices and the number of those batteries being used. And to answer your question, Joseph, it's as things get dumped out on the tip floor or the transfer station or compacted in a truck, other things are getting forced in and up against the batteries, and as they get crushed or broken, that's when you get this release of the energy. And it's interesting because it's a combination of releasing the energy, so you're shorting out the battery somehow. And what actually initially catches fire is the electrolyte in the battery, which is a flammable liquid or flammable gel. So it's not actually the lithium that's burning, because it's actually a lithium salt in there, but it's the electrolyte that actually starts burning with those lithium batteries. It's not metal lithium. But yeah, I mean, it's just the normal bulk handling of solid waste. Things run into each other and get crammed together, and in a compactor, of course, you're smashing stuff together intentionally to increase the density of what you're shipping offsite or what you're hauling around to get to your transfer station floor. So it's just a normal part of solid waste management. But occasionally you get this unfortunate set of circumstances where you have a lithium battery that gets crushed essentially or damaged in some way and causes this. One of the interesting things I found out in doing the research on that was that lithium batteries, they operate between like 3 and 4.5 volts, and they only operate within that range. And when they're fully discharged for use, there's still 3 volts of energy left in that battery, which is double the voltage of an alkaline battery. So even when they're discharged fully, there's still a huge amount of energy left in the battery itself, just by the nature of how they're designed to run. So that's why they actually have the capacity to make that much heat, is there's lots of energy left in the battery when they're discharged.
Thank you for your education. That was a lot to learn.
Yeah, this is really a great conversation. Joe.
Well, thanks, Renee. So this is a question for perhaps Public Works staff, which is, are we thinking about, as we talk about the South County transfer station planning, are we thinking about Hazo House for that facility? Has that conversation already happened, or it going to happen?
Yeah, this is Dean. Yes, that was all part of our survey of the South County residents and getting feedback on what they would like to see in terms of HHW services. And so we've pulled all that in, and we're definitely we definitely know it's important to increase HHW services down there.
Great, thank you.
Good question. Thanks, Joe. Anybody else? A couple of folks have mentioned it in chat, David, but we really appreciate you bringing this to us this morning. It's been a great opportunity for us to learn a little more. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure. I do this for fun, believe it or not. So,
And it sparked a good conversation, so thank you.
yeah, well, I'm a resource here and I'm volunteering my time and I enjoy it. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
So next thing on our agenda is to take a look at our 2023 work plan. Amanda, do you want to walk us through that?
Sure, so this is just a really brief check-in on the plan. Let me share it on the screen here. Can you all see it?
Maybe a little bigger? I'll put on my glasses too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the same document you saw last month, and then I added a couple things based on our conversation. You'll see that next meeting, we're planning to give a work reconfiguration update along with the staff recommendation. I think we also added some of your ideas for the summer, like climate mitigation and local system. So that would probably be a situation where we invite our senior program manager from the new climate senior program manager, connect with her and see if she's willing to give us some information. We also added a global recycling markets update based on our conversation last month. And then a couple of things I noted, Ecology has done some presentations about next cycle, and that was something that I thought this committee might be interested in learning more about. And also talking about, let's see, we scroll down. I believe we also added, here in August, business organics collection. So starting in 2024, there's going to be some changes to policies around organics collection and requirements for businesses to be offered organics collection and things like that. So we also thought that would be a great addition, since a lot of people here represent businesses or know business owners in their areas. So those are all things there. If anyone has more ideas to add, please reach out to me, let me know, and we can add things in. And as I've said before, this document changes throughout the year. It's not set in stone. We'll probably vote on it January or February, just to have it be in agreement that this is what we wanted to start the year with, but throughout the year, we can change things as needed.
Thanks for that, Amanda. Does anybody have any comments or things that they think they'd like to add right now?
I just have one quick question, Ed Kunkel, City of Lacey. Regards to 1799 and the effort to try to do organic collection for businesses, is the focus primarily on food service businesses, or can someone elaborate on that a little bit more?
Laura, if you're here, if I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're available, let me stop sharing here.
I think Laura is on the call, or she.
Yeah, I made it today. I wasn't sure I'd be able to, but sorry, can you repeat the question?
Ed was asking really what the focus of business is for the organics collectibles. Is primarily restaurants, or who are you really looking at for that?
As part of Bill 1799.
Yes. I was just going to say in regard to House Bill 1799.
Yeah, so the legislature put together a component of that 1799 organics management bill that's directed to businesses, as you are mentioning. And while I'm speaking about this, I'm going to just mention that we recently got an update that joint CPOs, the compost procurement ordinance, which is part of that bill that's coming up sooner, are not allowed. So I just wanted to mention that, but that's not a part, the business part. The business component of that, we have a new focus sheet on that requirement. And I have a link for that, and I can send that to Amanda so you can all look at that more closely. But basically, it's similar to the other one about compost procurement and about where there's curbside collection of food waste that's provided to businesses, then in 2024, they have to, if they're generating 8 cubic yards of organic material waste, they have to arrange for organic materials management service. So 8 cubic yards. And then in 2025, that number goes down to 4 cubic yards. And then in 2026, if they're generating at least 4 cubic yards of solid waste per week. So there's sort of a graduated, depending on the amount of organic waste they produce, they have to have services that are going to be managing that waste rather than just putting it in the landfill. And so I'm happy to send that link to Amanda to share with everybody.
Thanks for
And
that.
I'll put it in the chat here for anybody who happens to be.
So one more question on that. So basically that means that these various restaurants that are subject to this new ordinance would have to have a specific bin set aside for organic food waste?
I don't know that it mandates how they do that. I think each business would need to determine that, and it's restaurants, but it's also, you know, grocery stores and anyone else that generates those large amounts, any other business that generates those large amounts. There are a few exceptions. Without just reading the whole focus sheet to you, I can't, I'm not going to go into all that, but yeah, so if they have curbside collection, you know, they can go that route. So they may have, there's probably going to be more than one way this happens.
Interesting. I'd be curious to know if that affects, attracts vermin. That'd be my big concern, especially if I were a restaurant owner. I'd be concerned about that attracting vermin around my place of business. Interesting.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, and there has been some discussion about that, but you know, that will be something those businesses will need to manage, of course.
By the time we address this in August, I have a hunch we'll have a lot more information.
Yeah.
That will be really useful to us as we're looking at how to implement that. Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Renee. And I'll add on to Ed, you know, my biggest concern in that, you know, which is surmountable but ugly, is that facilities aren't built for the containers, right? So they're all going to be sitting out where everyone sees them and where people can get to them. So something to think about as we move forward. Renee, I was going to ask Amanda, did you say that we were going to learn about waste to energy industry advancements when we talk about climate?
Yeah, so Jim, are you thinking about landfill gas extraction, or what exactly do you have in mind?
Well, I mean, the example I gave was the incinerator in Stockholm that our mayor visited that was sitting on the edge of a city and had, you know, 0 to no emissions other than steam and produced snow all year round for skiing and energy to heat so many, or to power so many homes that they have to import waste. And I'd like the SWAC to be looking at that technology and see what opportunities there are to, for me, you know, the ultimate policy is to dispose of your waste within 100 miles too. Like, we have a really efficient and green system with the Republic landfill, but it could be better. And I don't know, I want to learn about that. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, great. I will talk to Jeff and see who would be best to give that sort of presentation.
You know, as Jim was saying that too, I noticed we don't have anything in October, and it might be interesting because we have a lot of new committee members to take a day trip out to Roosevelt again to see what they're doing that might be new. And I haven't talked with Steve about this. I think he's probably still on the call. So I'm springing it on him, but that would sure be an interesting thing to catch up on again. It's been a while.
Yeah, we'd be more than happy to host another tour.
Thank you. We can look at that, certainly look at that.
I was gonna bring that up as well. I noticed it on the bottom of the work plan, and I don't know if maybe Renee and I were the only ones that were here for the last tour in this group other than Steve, so.
Yeah, I've been in touch with the MRF Pioneer about tours. And so I wanted to get a feel for how many people would be interested in attending a tour. And if there's certain, like, if it needs, generally people need to have the tour before 3 p.m. or like a certain time of day that works best, mornings, afternoons. And then that way I can kind of work with Pioneer and see what we can schedule.
I know I always learn new things when we actually see the facilities that we're talking about. Steve, your hand is up.
Yeah, if anyone is going to be traveling to Las Vegas in the middle of next year, I'd be more than happy to also set up a tour for our new Polymer Center that is actually going to be opening up in Las Vegas.
Yeah, okay then. Thanks.
Yeah, so and going back to the MRF tours, it would have to be broken up. They said that they like to have like 5 or 6 people per tour, which works fine for us because we are a public committee and we can't have a quorum. So we might have sort of a staggered tour situation. So I can organize that a little bit more and get back to y'all at the beginning of the year.
That's a good idea. And Steve, you could do a remote tour of Las Vegas.
Yeah, we could potentially do that. I know we're planning on trying to do something like that, but well, we can definitely put that together.
Yeah, I think that could work, which might be kind of cool.
I think it's time for a retreat.
Greg. Are you muted?
Sorry, yeah, sorry about that. I didn't realize that.
I do it too.
But I just am an advocate of tours. You know, I can't necessarily access all of them, but I really love touring places and seeing how things work from the inside. So anytime there's an opportunity to that, I'll at least show up to the building, even if I can't go in. And for me personally, afternoons are always easier than mornings, especially if there's travel involved getting there, like say Roosevelt or something like that. You know, I'd much rather be running around at night than early in the morning.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tours are just so beneficial in so many ways. So anything else about our 2023 work plan? I'm not seeing any more hands. As Amanda mentioned, we'll probably take action on this probably in January, maybe in February when we're electing new officers, just so we have agreement on what we're going to be working on for the year. And with that, Dean, I think you are up with the manager's update.
Thank you, Renee. Just a few things this morning. We kind of rounded up this year's waste characterization study on November 7th. It went very well, that sampling round. The actual results of the sampling event, we plan to share with the SWAC shortly. I just don't have a time frame on that. Secondly, the compost procurement ordinance. We all learned about that back in September, and you provided some very helpful comments as a committee, and we incorporated those in October, and just wanted to catch you up. We basically had a briefing with the Board of County Commissioners just recently, and the board approved moving forward the procurement ordinance and schedule a public hearing. So we don't yet have that scheduled, but we expect probably sometime in January for that to go to an official hearing and then move on into an approved status. Education and outreach recruiting. April Lee, as you may recall, left us relatively recently, but we've had a job posted to fill her position. And as of this morning, this is very, very new information. I was just in a meeting before our meeting started, and I was informed that we made an offer to a candidate that was just this morning accepted. So can't give you any more detail than that, but we do have a replacement for April Lee as our outreach specialist 3. And at this point, as you know, we're also short on education and outreach personnel. We will be posting those positions now that we have the supervisor position filled. And so you can expect to see that as well. And lastly, Master Recycler Composter class. The Master Recycler program completed their annual volunteer training with 28 people completing the course. In addition to classroom lectures, trainees have participated in field trips to the Closed Loop Park compost demonstration site, the Warwick Hazo House, and Pacific Disposal. And their graduation, this class graduation was actually on November 10th. We had a couple of staff attend that, so went very well. It was a very successful class this year. And that wraps up the manager's report for December. Renee?
Thanks, Dean. Any questions or comments for Dean? That was very concise. Thank you.
Yes.
Do we have any announcements or comments from the group for the good of the committee? I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, there is one. Laura.
Yeah, I always have something, don't I?
And we value that about you. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I just wanted to mention that, let's see, let me find my notes real quick here. Sorry. Oh, you were talking the wonderful presentation that we had earlier about facility development. And I just wanted to mention, you may be aware, but the EPA has announced their bipartisan infrastructure law, which funds a bunch of infrastructure for solid waste potentially. So EPA is now seeking applications right now for the solid waste infrastructure for recycling grant program. And they have bunches of money for that. They also have a recycling education and outreach grant program that that just opened. So I just wanted to bring that up in case the county or cities are interested in those funds that are available after you jump through all those EPA hoops for local jurisdictions.
Thanks for that, Laura. Anything else? If not, let me just say happy holidays to all of you, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful time with family over the next few weeks.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
We are.
Holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Take care. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Great
Bye-bye.
presentation, David.
Bye.
Thank you.